Hi, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to Encounters, South Africa's International Documentary Festival, and of course to the South African premiere of I Am Here, a documentary of Holocaust survivor Ella Blumenthal's life story. This is a film that has been so sensitively created, portraying love, heartache, family, loss, a period of time in our history that we can never forget, but also a celebration of life, of renewal and growth. My name is Heather Blumenthal. I'm the Executive Director of the Cape Town Holocaust and Genocide Center, and it is really my pleasure to be the moderator of our panel discussion tonight. I know that we have a number of people that are trying to get onto the Q&A. Those who are battling can go onto the stream on Facebook, where you'll be able to watch as well. It truly is my honor to introduce our panelists, the protagonist of the film, Ella Blumenthal, the director and executive producer of I Am Here, JORDY, SANK, and of course the producer, GABRIELLA BLUMBERG. But I think, JORDY, we need to start with you. We need to start at the beginning. I believe that this was a dream of yours for 15 years to tell the story of Ella. Why and how did it come about?
Thank you so much for having us on the panel, Heather, and also just quickly thank you so much to Mandisa and everyone at Encounters. So I think everyone that knows and who's met Ella knows that there's something extremely unique and there's such a spark within her. When I was a teenager growing up in Camps Bay, one fateful Friday night, Ella and I happened to be at the same family for Shabbat dinner. And I remember Ella standing up and telling these harrowing stories of surviving the concentration camps. No one really actually invited her to speak. She actually just on her own sort of whim stood up and was telling these harrowing stories, and everyone around the table was in tears. And then almost as though like a switch had flicked, she was dancing, singing, playing with the kids, and I just thought to myself, like, you know, these two things don't almost match up. On the one hand, you have this woman who's been through one of the darkest moments in history, but she has this life force and this zest for life that I've never seen in someone. And, you know, it was sort of that moment that I really sort of befriended Ella. And from then, I was still in school and I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I knew that when the time comes, I really want to tell this story. And the world actually, it's not just that, but the world actually needs to hear this story. So that's where it all sort of began.
So I think that Ella, maybe we should come to you. You befriend people all the time. You have a love of people, of making friends, and you always talk about being kind and honest and telling your story. When JORDY came to you and said that he wanted to make a film about your life, what did you say? Were you in agreement? How many questions did you ask? Was it an easy process?
Told him to go ahead. It was an honor for me to get my life to people that they should understand that it should be no hate anymore, because after all my terrible life, I remained truly still loving people, wanted to carry on. I want to be understanding that we must all love each other. Enough. Thank you.
Okay, JORDY, you know, you talk about the story under the genre of animated documentary. And yes, it is in part an animated documentary, but it's far beyond just an animated documentary. It's a Holocaust story. It's a survivor's testimony. It's a story of resilience and courage. What did you want the story to portray?
So I think you're completely right. It's so much more than the description of an animated documentary. I think for us, really, I didn't just want it to be another testimony, but I think I wanted it also to be a celebration of a remarkable, extraordinary life, and that's what Ella is. And you know, it's also, especially to us all, we're all sort of battling in these crazy times of Corona, and Ella's someone who's been through some of the most terrible trauma that any human has really ever experienced. And I think one of the messages that I really, really wanted to embed in the documentary was for us to be able to learn from Ella's positive outlook on life, and to be able to sort of take that and reflect on our own lives and see how can we sort of uplift. We all go through dark times, and we all, you know, sort of go through different traumas in life. And it's just sort of, I think Ella is so inspiring that I really just wanted an audience to leave the cinema with a massive smile on their face, and to say, like, you know, how can I sort of rise to Ella's level, and sort of also just live my life with such a joie de vivre and a zest for life. So that was one of the main intentions of the film.
I must tell you that I watched the film a number of times because it's not the kind of film that you can watch once and walk away from it and not really gauge all the different layers. I mean, it is such a layered, multifaceted documentary. It was interesting that you used animation in a film that traditionally becomes quite a somber film. However, the use of your animation has given the film a different feel. You know, often people who are doing a Holocaust story will try and include all of the gory pictures that you see in the archival material. And I noticed with the film that in the beginning, you did use our historical archive material, and then you very succinctly went into animation, which told a different kind of story in a different way for Ella. Talk us through the process of how you got to the animation, why you chose to go the route that you did.
So initially, I think the first cut that we had of the film, we actually were experimenting with stock footage, and just hearing, you know, some of Ella's stories are so uplifting. You know, she's able to find such light and hope in such darkness. And then, you know, then there's other moments that are incredibly terrifying and dark. And we just thought that the stock footage really, the way that Ella tells the stories with such expression and such soul, that we really just thought that the stock footage isn't really serving the film in the way that we think it should be. So we started sort of exploring other avenues. And for us, animation was the perfect tool to tell Ella's story, because it allowed an audience member to walk alongside her, almost, you know, stepping into her shoes and seeing things as they happened and as they were described. And as well, we also just thought that it was such a lovely way to appeal to a younger audience. I know Gabi and I, we both went to Jewish day schools, and often when you learn about the Holocaust, it seems very black and white in a textbook, you know, just another chapter of history that we need to learn. And we really just wanted this film not to be so. You know, we wanted an audience member to be able to sort of empathize with Ella and to see things and experience them as she describes them. So that was just sort of a way that we thought we would elevate the documentary and sort of help it connect to a lot more people.
Well done, because it certainly does. It certainly does. It really is. For those in our audience who haven't seen the film, I really would suggest that you buy your ticket and you watch the film. It really is a very, very special film. Ella, I don't know how you felt about the use of animation within your story, but one of the things that for me was very heartwarming was that your memories of your family were often brought into the animation at various times. For example, where your father turns around and you see him for the last time, but then you start dancing with your father like you did when you were at home. Or when Roma tells you about all the Shabbat food that is being cooked and that you smell the aromas. How did that make you feel? Did it resonate with you, or did you feel that maybe we shouldn't go down the road of animation?
I'm not quite sure. Why do you bring up the animation and the feeling of my feelings in my Danek when we were standing after one of our friends was hanged and we were talking about food? Roma was bringing up the Friday night food, the Shabbat taste. We were tasting it, that she was trying to make us all feel, smell the food and taste it. Why do you bring it up? I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll tell you why I bring it up. Because I think that when you are, I would imagine, and I can only imagine, that when you are faced with such traumatic experiences, what gives you the strength to continue and to fight? Is it the memories that you have, that you use, that gives you the strength and the faith to continue and to fight on? I think JORDY, Ella.
Never gave up. Carry on. I wanted to live. Okay. Sorry. They can't beat me. They can't bring me down. I was fighting to survive. The feeling and the strength of carrying on, of survival, was always with me. And even now when I'm a free person, when I wake up in the morning, I don't have to open the curtains because I never close them at night. So I can see in the morning when I wake up, the daylight coming in, and I'm alive. I say, it's another day for me. One more day, one more day. Thank you.
JORDY, there were two icons that you used within the film at different times. The one was the single butterfly in the beginning. For the first probably half of the film, you see one butterfly, and then you start to see multiple butterflies in blue butterflies. JORDY, what did the butterfly signify for you and why?
So I actually don't like saying what it meant for me, because when various people have watched the film, I've heard so many incredible interpretations of what it means to other people. So I actually sometimes it's actually better for me not to say it, because I'd rather actually hear what you think. But for me, just to tell a few of the interpretations that I've heard. One is because it's blue, it represents the Jewish people, and goes from being squashed. The butterfly goes from being squashed to being sort of numerous and flourishing towards the end. The other people say it's almost the sort of spirit, an embodiment of Ella's spirit. Other people say it's her faith, and I think it's sort of all of the above. I think it's this sort of hope that gets, for most people, gets crushed, but at the very end, I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but there's an uplifting moment with the butterflies, and yeah, so it sort of symbolizes the hope for the future and looking forward.
Okay, so you've told me what everybody else has told you. What was your reason? What was your feeling about the butterflies?
So for me, it was hope. It was almost like the hope being crushed, and then towards the end, the sort of outpouring of hope, when Ella sort of is able to sort of pick herself up and move on. But I'll tell you a little sort of snippet regarding the butterflies. You mentioned the sort of quantity of butterflies. At the beginning, there's only one, and then towards the end, there's actually 23 butterflies. Right. And the 23 butterflies are actually representative of the 23 souls that Ella lost in the Holocaust.
Well, I must tell you, Jordy, that I started to count the 23 because I thought maybe there were 23, and I thought maybe I'm imagining it, and so it was frame by frame. I was counting the butterflies. The other icon that you used was the feather. What were you meaning or thinking about when you used the feather?
Well, the feather is very particular in the scene that we used it, because Ella so vividly describes the burning of the ghetto, and how she could see the feathers and the smell of the burning bedding from all the different places in the ghetto. So that's what the feather was. It was just a sort of visual representation of that. But I think also, I think there is other symbolism that you could pick up from the feather. But yeah, I think it was just, we were really trying to illustrate, the beauty in what Ella was saying. Yes, Ella, you want to say something?
No, I just want to say, I was smelling the feathers burning. It's got a specific smell when feathers are burning. It's a sharp, specific, a different kind of smell. And this is what you brought up in me.
Yes.
Okay, Gabriella, I think that if we go to you, that you're very passionate about telling stories that have an impact and a cause. So coming on as the producer of I Am Here, what did that represent for you as far as a cause and an impact?
Sure. Well, I think, when JORDY told me about this project and I met Ella for the first time, there was no question in my mind about the importance of telling a story and telling the story now. Firstly, Ella's one of the last remaining Holocaust survivors in the world today. So there really was this impetus to capture her story. And I think if we just take a moment to look at the world around us, not only globally, but on a more of an individual level, we see time and time again how we keep defining ourselves by what we aren't. We keep seeing xenophobia, anti-Semitism, othering that's happening. And I think we really wanted and want Ella's story to be a talking point and a catalyst to speak about discrimination that is still happening. And, you know, Ella speaks about it in the film, about this danger of, you know, not seeing people as people, not, you know, defining people, whether it's by race or by religion. And Ella is an example of taking that to the extreme. So, you know, for me, it really was a privilege to come onto this film and to create. I think we really found that the only way to have empathy is to have understanding. And we really just hope that this film garnered that understanding and that empathy through being exposed on a first-hand level to Ella's story.
In the very beginning, is Ella still with us? Ella?
She seems to have, I think, accidentally left. I'm sure she'll join us
Okay,
shortly.
she'll join us again. But, you know, I thought it was very interesting how you opened the film with what is currently happening in the world as far as hatred, anti-Semitism, othering, prejudice. And then you got Howard Feldman to talk about the letter that Ella had responded to. So maybe one of you can talk about, you know, about the fact that this letter was written, it was given to Ella, and how, I mean, I would find it quite difficult actually responding to somebody like that with love, who really just is denying your whole history. I think you have to be quite a courageous, sensitive, kind person to be able to respond, and to respond with love. What made you use that and bring that into, this was in a South African context, but you'd also been talking about anti-Semitism in a global context and a context in Holocaust denialism. Tell us about the letter.
Sure.
Why?
Sure. So I think that, as you mentioned, we open the film showing scenes of anti-Semitism globally. That we actually added on into the edit in a bit of a later phase. We kept being asked the question, why is this film still relevant in terms of anti-Semitism? You know, this is an old news, it isn't still happening. So I think we wanted to highlight that anti-Semitism, unfortunately, is still rampant, and that montage of the news footage shows that. When this, there was a woman who posted not only anti-Semitic slurs, but Holocaust denialist rhetoric on social media, and Ella took it on herself to write an open letter back to this social media influencer. And I think for us, it really embodied, as you mentioned, it embodies Ella's personality. She is not somebody to sit back and to let, you know, mistruth spread. She's not somebody to sit back and not defend herself. And more important, I think, than defending herself, she took this opportunity to spread love. She took this opportunity to, she never blamed this woman. She said in her letter, and we show parts of it in the film, but she really encourages this woman to, you know, to read up on the facts, to not be overtaken by sort of propaganda, and to educate herself. And she invites her to sit down and to have a talk. And, you know, as you mentioned, how many of us would have the humility to she opened herself up like that and really just spread this message of love. And I think for us also creatively, it was a lovely way to bring the audience, to introduce Ella, going from the anti-Semitism that is happening on a global context, bringing it back to what happened very recently in South Africa with this influencer, and then showing off Ella's personality of really just spreading love and light into this world.
Okay, so there was another very interesting factor of the format of the documentary. You know, often when one makes a documentary and it's the somebody's story, you have two things: multiple people that are interviewed to tell you the story, okay, which is the norm. In this case, Ella became the protagonist of the whole film. Occasionally, somebody prompted a question or somebody prompted the conversation along, but they certainly weren't interviewed as you would traditionally do. So that is the one thing that I found very interesting. And the second thing is that although it went in a linear fashion as far as the historical timeline that one followed, you moved between the past to the present, to the past to the present, which is also very unusual. Why did you choose, and either Gabriella or JORDY can answer this, why did you decide to use the two formats within the documentary?
Cool, Gab, do you want to take one and I'll take the other?
Sure, you start.
Okay, so I'll start with the jumping sort of back and forward between the animation and the sort of present day. We really wanted to sort of show a contrast and a juxtaposition to what Ella went through in the past, and also sort of how it sort of has shaped her future, as well as just a positive outlook today. There's certain things to me when I watch the film that almost seem like iconic to Ella's personality. And then, for instance, when she hides the potato in the kitchen, for instance, that sort of helps you understand when she's having that one conversation and she says, you want to call me stingy? You sort of understand this frugal personality based on what she had been through in the past. So it took a long time to shape the narrative and jump back and forward in time, but we really tried to sort of let an audience sort of understand the connection between the subject and also between the past and the present that Ella lives.
Well
Sure.
done.
And I think just to speak to the decision to not have talking heads, I think, as JORDY mentioned, growing up watching different historical and documentaries that were about the Holocaust, there were the familiar tropes of having a lot of stock footage and talking heads, these experts giving their opinion. And we really wanted this film to be about Ella. Of course, it's about the Holocaust, and of course, it explores the horrors that happened in that period of time. But this film is about Ella. She has this boundless energy, this remarkable resilience, this unwavering love and determination and love of her family. And so the lessons that we can learn are through her. And who is more of an expert than Ella herself? We sharing her story. So yeah, I think that was one of the reasons why we decided to take away the talking heads. And I think also, just to, as you mentioned, we filmed these interactions with Ella speaking to her close friends and her family. And initially when we had filmed, we filmed some talking heads interviews with Ella. And we just decided there was this lack of intimacy as the audience listening to Ella's story. And so we went back again, and it was at her 98th birthday party when it was a privilege to be almost a fly on the wall, watching her share her story with her family over that weekend. And we also got that feedback from the family that it was a cathartic experience for them to have this unlimited time to ask any questions in a way that they hadn't before. So I think it really allows the audience a very intimate moment with Ella and her story.
I think where you are very lucky and where it's come through in such a profound way, and you mentioned earlier that Ella is one of a few survivors that are still with us who can really tell their story. And I think it's very important that while we have survivors with us, that we can tell the story, that they can tell the story, that it comes from them, and that it's also told in such a way that one is able to appeal to a multitude of audiences and of ages. And I think that because of Ella's dynamic personality and her sense of humor and her character, she allows the story, she captures the story, and she almost holds you in the palm of her hands while she's telling the story, that you almost forget time and you forget space because you become so involved and captivated by this remarkable woman. Ella, now that you're back with us, when you watched the film, when it was completed, what did you feel? Did you feel that JORDY and Gabriella had been able to tell your story as you wanted it to be told? Don't know if Ella's still with us. Ella, would you like me to repeat the question? I said that when you saw the completed film of your story, how did you feel? Did JORDY and Gabriella do justice to your story, to your character, to your personality, to your love? Ella, you have to unmute.
Did you say, how did I feel when the film was finished?
Yes.
I was very proud of JORDY that he could bring my life into the presence that people could see, could feel with me, could understand what's been happening in the world in those days. I was proud and I was grateful to him. I was thankful to him. What else could I say? That's how I felt. Because you could never believe it if you read it, if you see it, if you think what you read it in books and papers and in journals, that such things did happen. It's beyond one's imagination. And he brought it so truly, so with such great sense and understanding that when people finish it, I am sure they walk away knowing truly what has been happening, and they will remember and they will know it and they will share it with their families and their friends and their children.
Well, JORDY and Gabriella, we have from Brad Gelbart to you, Ella. Mrs. Blumenthal, you continue to give us so much strength and inspiration. JORDY, Shakir on capturing Ella's essence. I love that you used animation for a Holocaust documentary. From Linda Hector, she said, just watched it, remarkable film, loved it. There are a number of people who are asking, How do we see the film? They didn't manage to see it tonight. Well, I must tell you that Encounters will have it on for until the 20th of this month. So anybody who hasn't seen it, you can go onto the Encounters website and you can have a look at the film. And really, I have to say again, and I'm not being paid to say this, but you have to watch the film. It truly, truly is a remarkable, remarkable film. I must tell you that I have judged on numerous platforms around the world at film festivals, and it's very rare that you have a Holocaust documentary that makes it onto the billboards. Unfortunately, and I don't know what the reason is, but people don't want to choose the Holocaust films. So the fact that this film has got onto Encounters is a huge win, is a huge kudos for JORDY and Gabriella and to you, Ella. Gabriella, you were awarded the Audience Award at the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival in 2021. You were in the official selection for the Miami Jewish Film Festival in 2021. You're on Encounters. Where to from here?
Onwards and upwards. I think firstly, just to, it has been a really unbelievable experience being at these film festivals. I think that the win at the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival was really validating for our team, because as everyone who's watching this panel knows, that film festivals are not as they used to be, and we really missed being able to be in the audience, hearing people laughing and crying next to us. So I think that that first initial win was very validating. And we were just speaking just before this panel started how much of a privilege it is to be at Encounters, and we're going to be going to Durban International Film Festival next, because 2 years ago JORDY and I attended the South African festivals when they were still in person, and really this was what these platforms were where we really aspired to be. We really respect the Encounters Film Festival, so it's a privilege to be here. So our next steps, we've been very lucky that we've signed with a sales agent, Metro International Entertainment. They're based in the UK, and we are busy discussing our strategy with them. I think it really is our goal to be at film festivals internationally, so that film lovers can watch this film. And then we really hope to have theatrical or broadcast release. But our heart at the end of the day, in a few years' time, will be to have this film playing in the educational market, and whether that's at schools or at museums or places of worship. I think it's just, for us, we want to spread and share Ella's story, and we want people to be able to meet Ella through this film.
Okay, so there's some more things that have come through here from Brian and Anne Nelson. Toda Rabah for allowing us to share this incredible time with Ella BLUMENTHAL, a truly remarkable woman who is an absolute inspiration for hope in this dark world we are currently living in. May Hashem bless you richly, dear Mrs. Ella BLUMENTHAL. Wishing you shalom and rest. May our world learn from you, a wonderful privilege. From Svetlana Urshov, I did not see the registration button to watch a movie, only a link for the Zoom registration. She will be getting the link so that she can watch the film. Don't worry, Svetlana. From Sharon Jackson, thank you for your bravery and your story. What a survivor. From Sally Z, what touched me in particular was the part where Ella got married and went to live in South Africa. She never told anyone of her experiences because she felt no one would understand or relate. I think that resonates
Thank you.
universally. I tell you, I think that we could carry on talking. Karen Fig says, thank you very much. I think from me, and on behalf of the Encounters South African International Film Festival, we'd like to thank you, Ella, for being with us tonight. JORDY, for you and Gabriella sharing your creative making of this wonderful, wonderful documentary. Encounters would like to thank you and their partners who have made Encounters possible. Remember that the festival is on until the 20th of June, so you still have a chance to be able to watch I Am Here. From me, Heather Blumenthal, and our panelists, thank you so much for joining us. God bless, be safe, and be healthy.